Hello everybody, Tyranno here, and welcome back to another episode of War Thunder. Well, I say another episode of War Thunder, it's actually a remake of a previous episode of War Thunder, or a guide on War Thunder more specifically. As most of you know, we got the new patch recently, and among the changes were changes to the damage models and structural integrity of the aircraft, so it's now a lot easier to crash land aircraft. Before it was doable, I did it many times in realistic battles, but it was a bit hit and miss. Sometimes you'd be completely okay, sometimes you'd lose your wings, explode, and fires, and all sorts of nasty stuff. But I actually did a video on it a few months ago, or last year. It's actually the third most popular video on the channel, and so, other people are interested in how to do crash landings as well. But of course that is now obsolete, because obviously we got the new patch, which has changed how that all works. But somebody actually wrote in the comments section of that video, Carl Kaniawan, I do apologise if I've mispronounced your name, basically asking if I could do another video, because they were having trouble landing the PBY. The wings kept falling off, and I said at the time I'd see how changes were with the new patch, and then do a video if needed. And I've decided to do the video, because the old one is quite obsolete by now, and it was done many patches ago. And so hopefully this will be a, nice updated version of that video. Now, little disclaimer on how I'm testing it. I'm going to be doing it in test flights rather than online games because, well, obvious reasons, being shot at, and it would be unfair on the team to just randomly fly off to do crash landing tests. I'm using realistic battle in the test flight, so realistic battle flight models and all that. I'm going to be doing a variety of different planes. I'm not going to name them all here, but more or less one of every type, so like one biplane, one single engine fighter, one twin engine fighter, single engine float plane, twin engine float plane, twin engine fighter, dive bomber, twin engine bomber, four engine bomber, rocket plane, jet fighter, and jet bomber. I think that's pretty much all of them. So we're going to get a nice little cross section of all the aircraft and how to crash land them and how they react when crash landing them. But yeah, that's enough of the intro. Let's get straight into the episode. Now, the first aircraft we're using is the I-153 Chaika, M62 variant. Now, this is a bit different from most biplanes because most have a fixed undercarriage. This has an, deployable undercarriage. How's it going to do? I think it should do relatively well for crash landing or belly landing. Really, you want to land either on your fuselage or catch it with the rear tail wheel. It sort of depends. If it catches onto something and gets caught, it may rip your plane in half. But that is a relatively good way to stop here if you're just trying to sort of come to a slow stop, I suppose. But see how we land. Now, that was a relatively good crash landing. As you can see, we only lost the engine. Took no damage anywhere else. And the wings, none of them took damage either. I thought the bottom wings could take some damage, but, they've stayed on. They haven't taken any damage. So that's how the I-153 Chaika takes the crash landing. So how to do a good crash landing in this particular aircraft, or with biplanes in general, if you lose your undercarriage. Now, the next plane we're using is the F1M. F1M2. Basically, it's a seaplane. Now, I don't know how this is going to go. Usually in historical battles, I would think you have some sort of place to land. I believe landing near carriers is meant to rearm you. But in arcade battles and stuff like that, you may need to land on the actual airfield itself. It was actually, like I said at the beginning, it was someone trying to land seaplanes on land that asked for me to do a guide on it. So we're going to see how this goes first. It should actually be relatively easy. I can't see this going too bad. The floats, I mean, you can see that the floats don't really break off. I don't think they can break off, so yeah, at least with the ordinary seaplanes, it's pretty easy. Although we're not getting a rearming sign, so I don't know why. I don't know how you... Usually it would rearm and I think spawn you in the air, but maybe it's because I haven't really used any ammunition. But it's not giving me the choice to rearm, or perhaps because it's a test flight. So that's how you land with the seaplane, though. Now, for the single-engine fighter, we're going to use the Spitfire Mark II-A that you can see here. Now, this is a bit more complicated than with a biplane, but not much. I mean, it's only got the wings, as you can see here, rather than two sets of wings. And you've got landing flaps and combat flaps. Now, landing flaps should slow you down, but they also generate lift. You can use them if you want. You could probably get away with not using them. Oh, pulled them out a little too early. Yeah, that's one reason not to use your flaps. But it should be also a lot sturdier, I would have thought, than the biplanes. Now, this is going to be a little bit more difficult because of the flap damage, although that's probably represents combat damage a bit more realistically. So, again, like with the biplane, we're going to try and get it down to about 70 miles an hour and try and catch it with the tail hook. We really want to just eliminate all our forward momentum and just sort of fall straight onto the ground at an extremely low speed. And as you can see there, we, did it pretty easily. We got a bit more damage, although that wasn't intended to happen. But again, we landed it pretty easily. You can see they've really made it a lot easier to do these crash landings / belly landings after patch 1.49 or 1.70.1945. Now the next plane we're trying is the SBD Dauntless, which is a bit different in that it has air brakes and it has these sort of gull-like wings. I think that's the proper name, but you can see they're not exactly straight. But it also has, I've forgotten the name, air brakes. So you can use these to lose a lot of speed very quickly, but I don't recommend having them deployed the whole time. When you're going to hit the ground, I would recommend just undeploying them. Now we probably came in a little too sharp there, or a little too fast, because as you can see we've slightly damaged the tail. Only ever so slightly, but not something you particularly want. So, despite this, you would have thought this would be a bit more sturdier being a naval aircraft, but this has actually taken more damage than the land-based ones, which has kind of surprised me. Now, the next plane we're using is the PE-3. PE-3 BIS, that was the variant. I couldn't quite remember the variant. Now, obviously, you can see this is a twin-engine fighter, or / bomber, but it's used as a fighter mostly online. But as you can see here, the main difference is it's got a tail gunner, it's got 2 engines, and it's a lot bigger. It's got a much longer wingspan, or span, not span. But basically, the main problem I've been trying this a few times. Twin-engine fighters seem to have their own problems. Basically, you can land it perfectly fine, but the wings seem to get ripped off while actually doing the landing. We're actually going to get the bombs reloaded in a sec, which is going to make this even harder. Now, I'm using my landing flaps because basically it keeps falling out of the sky and just hitting the ground really quick, before I can have a chance to slow down, which is obviously something I don't want. So, you can see that now it's worked this time relatively easily. I did some experiments with the ME410 and it kept hitting the ground and then sliding for a few meters, and then both wingtips would just fall off for no reason. I couldn't quite fathom it out, but basically either it's a problem with that particular plane or I just got incredibly lucky while using the PE-3 BIS, but I'll try it again with the ME410 and see how that goes. So here we are with the ME410, or more specifically the B6/R3, or is it? Oh, B6/R3, yeah. So, I'm going to try using the landing flaps again, because they seem to do quite well. They, from stopping us hitting the ground just so quick. And it should hopefully slow us down as well. Now, it could be that I'm coming in too fast. This thing seems to accelerate extremely quick, and it doesn't seem to matter how far away I turn the engines off. I always seem to be getting here going God knows how many miles. So as you can see now, I hit the ground, start sliding, then the tail just falls off. Now, retract everything. Now, we did manage to successfully land that time, but we did take quite a lot of damage. You can see here, we lost the tail and lost the engines, and the wings are quite badly damaged in some areas, so it can depend on what fighter you're using. I mean, we hit the ground extremely hard with the PE-3 BIS, but with the ME410 it just seems to work completely differently. But basically, use the same sort of standard, land on your fuselage, or I wouldn't try and catch the tail of this aircraft, but landing on your fuselage should allow you to, land successfully, although you can still take damage. Now, the next plane we're trying to land is the PBY-5A. 5A. Now, this actually does have gears, and I managed to simulate battle damage by trying to deploy them in the water where we take off from. As you can see, it kind of broke off, and except for one, which stayed on, weirdly enough. I don't know how that's going to affect things, but as you can see, this is a lumbering whale of a plane. It just falls all over the place. It doesn't gain any speed, so I'm kind of wondering how this is going to go, especially with that one gear at the front. Oh, it's not actually broken. Okay, so it's going to make things really hard, because apparently it bounces us off of the ground. Hit trees? Sort of. Managed to land it. It's probably actually a bit easier if you don't have that front wheel out. It would probably have just hit the ground and, you know, that would be it. But I think that should count as a proper landing. As with the last one, though, it doesn't seem to give you an option to repair, because obviously you're not meant to land on airfields. So I think the problem may be that some people are having is possibly the landing on airfields. I mean, I don't use aircraft, or float planes, sorry, but yeah, I think you're meant to land near airfields and stuff to rearm them, so it's possibly that's causing the problem rather than the crash landing. I don't think we're going to be able to take off again. See if I can. Putting it on full speed, and yeah, it's not happening, is it? Even with that wheel. So yeah, you can crash land these successfully. Getting off the ground again or rearming may be a completely different question. Now, the next aircraft we're using is the Ki-49-2B Late, which, as you can see, is a twin-engine bomber. Now, it was this aircraft, or one of the Ki-49s, that originally inspired me to do crash landing guides. So basically, I kept going into battles with these, losing my engines and stuff, or gears. That was what I was losing, the gears, and having to land. Now, this should be relatively easy. I don't think I had any problems landing this in realistic battles in, you know, before the update. It should be a lot easier after the update. So, coming in nice and slow, we're going to try and land it on the fuselage, really, with the Ki-49-2B. Get our gears up. Well, we're going to have to try and avoid this tree, though, so pull up a little bit. Use landing flaps. Bombs just reloaded, so that's going to be added. And we raise the flaps just as we sort of hit the ground. Now, we did take some damage to the fuselage, and we lost our gunner. I figure it's the one who sort of did have his head through the floor, so that's probably gone somewhere now. Probably off of his body, although the game just says he's unconscious, so maybe he just got knocked out and flew back. But yeah, you could say twin-engine bombers are relatively easy to land. And, you know, now, the next aircraft we're using is the Lancaster B Mark III, and as you can see, it's a big 4-engine bomber. We're going to bring our landing flaps down again. Now, the main problem with this is basically those wings. They're just too wide. It seems the larger the aircraft, the larger the wings, and the more chance of the wings falling off. I don't know why it is, but that just seems to be the main problem while testing this. I haven't tested it with the Lancaster, but other bombers and stuff, it seems the main problem is trying to get these wings to stay on. So we're coming in nice and slow. Got our landing flaps down. Give us some lift, and to slow us down, right, we've hit the ground, pull them up so we don't rip anything off. And there we go. Any damage? Again, fuselage. Again, engines. But the crew are all okay. The wings have stayed on. I don't know what it is. Some of these aircraft, I don't know if it is just luck or something, but some of these aircraft you hit and you land like this, relatively quick and easy, but others it seems like you touch the ground, the wings and the tails will just go flying off for no reason. Now, the next lot of planes we're going to be landing are jet and rocket planes. Well, first of all, we're going to be landing the MB-163B, which is a rocket plane. It didn't do particularly well in real life because it only had a few minutes of fuel. It was just too fast to aim at targets properly, and once you ran out of fuel, you were a sitting duck. That was easy to destroy. I actually recorded an attempt at landing this a minute ago, but the recording got lost somehow. Basically, I'm going to try landing without the gear, like last time, and it should work relatively easy. The reason I tested this was because there was an annoying glitch that I never personally experienced because I don't have this unlocked properly. I only have it unlocked for test flights. But basically, you would land your aircraft and the wings would just break or it would destroy itself. It was just impossible to land the thing, almost. But we're going to try and land it without the gear again. And like I said, I've done this before, but the recording got lost. But it should land relatively easy. It's got my landing flaps out. coming in nice and slow. Use the cannon to slow us down a bit if needed. See how much momentum we lose when using the cannon. And there we go. Get the flaps away so they don't get damaged. I actually said in my last recording before it got lost, it's probably better doing it without the skid, because the skid gives you extra height. I assume that makes you a bit more unbalanced. And, you know, that could just cause a whole lot of problems. But there we go, we landed, and no damage. Although we're not reloading for some reason, so... Okay, that's another problem. It seems to be a bit of a problem with some of these aircraft, but there we go. So that's how you land the ME-163B Comet. Now the next aircraft we're testing is the ME-262U4. Basically it's an ME-262 but with a 50mm cannon. Unfortunately I just don't have the ME-262 regular version, but I've decided to do this one because there are a lot of ME-262s, so hopefully this will be quite similar landing for all of them. Now as you can see we're coming in quite fast. I'm not sure if my landing gears have deployed. No, landing flaps, there they go. Now with the 50mm cannon we can slow ourselves quite a lot. Coming in quite fast, probably a little too fast. But with the 50mm cannon we've got ourselves down to about 140 odd miles an hour, nearly 130. And it's going to be a lot more complicated because we don't have any props that can get destroyed, but we're going to be landing on the engines, and... Oh, that's really odd. I thought the engines would get ripped off or something, but we actually used them as a kind of skid to land on. Well, it showed... I don't know, it shows a bit of green around them, like a bit greener than the rest of it. Does that mean it's damaged, or... I can't see any damage model thing coming up on the left, though, like, you know, as if we'd damaged it, so... Yeah, that seems a really easy way to land it. So, there you go. If you want to land your ME-262, just use your engines as skids. Or try and land it on its belly if you somehow lose the engines, but there you go. Now, the last plane we're trying is the Canberra, what model is it? B Mark II. Basically, it's a British jet. It was between this and the Arado 234, because I don't have many jets unlocked, and there's two Arados, but they have quite significant differences, whereas there's quite a lot of Canberras, and, well, the B-57 is quite similar to the Canberra. It's actually a Canberra built in America, from what I understand, so gonna see how this goes. I honestly don't know. It looks sort of fragile, but I don't know. I have a feeling the problem's going to be the wings, if anything. Oh, I've got the landing flaps. So we're slowing ourselves right down. We're actually gaining a bit of height. Well, we're actually staying the same, even though we've lost like 20 odd miles an hour. So, right, it's starting to fall a little bit now. Pull the flaps in before they get damaged, and yep, successful landing. Fuel tanks are okay. We're okay. No crew have been injured. Yeah, it all went pretty well. So that's how you land the jet bombers. I mean, again, it might be different for the Arado, but that's how you land the Canberras at least. And I can't see it being too much different with the other jet bombers. But anyway, that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it proves to be as useful as the original episode that it's based on. As usual, leave feedback. Could always do with more feedback. Leave likes if you like the video. Subscribe if you like these sorts of videos. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.